Welcome to the Girl Power Alliance podcast, where you're going to meet and hear from some inspiring women with incredible stories who are leading in business and in faith. We are on a mission to impact the world by empowering women to dream bigger through kingdom-minded mentoring and leadership. This is where women grow. Hi there. Welcome back to another episode of the Girl Power Alliance podcast. I'm all by myself today. This is going to be just me, Michelle Schaffer. I'm the founder of Girl Power Alliance and the creator of the Radiant Leadership Academy. I'm going to be talking about that today. Radiant Leadership Academy and the book, Radiant Leadership, that will be coming out sometime this year. I'm super excited about it. This will be my third book. I was just having a conversation with somebody today she said something about me being a writer. And I said, it's so funny. I still have a hard time saying I'm a writer, even though I'm on my third book. How many books does it take until you acknowledge the fact that maybe I am a writer? I love writing. I have known since I was a little girl, really little, that I was going to write a book, at least a book. And over the years, I've thought of so many different subjects that I would like to write on. So when it finally came to pass a few years ago that I wrote my first book, it was such an out of body experience that I almost didn't even feel ownership in it. People talk about it or read it or look at it my publisher called the day that it got delivered to me. I had it in my hands and I did not have a lot of emotion because I think it just didn't feel real to me. I don't know. I have a problem. But that's not what today's podcast is about. Today's podcast is I'm really going to talk to you a lot about the Radiant Leadership Academy, what it is, the book, The Radiant Leadership. What is this whole thing about leadership? Why am I so obsessed with talking about it? And why do you need to be obsessed with it? You need to be obsessed with the Radiant Leadership Academy, the Radiant Leadership book. And I want you to be. So I'm going to start by by backing up. So my entire career, I can actually look back to myself as a high school student. And I can see that I was always very, very drawn to leadership roles, people that were in leadership, learning about people that were leaders, reading books about them and biographies and stuff like that. And I always kind of stepped into those roles, whether it was intentional or unintentional. Leadership was just something that I always felt very, very drawn to. When I became an adult and moved into more entrepreneurship and started out my career in the direct selling world. Before that, I had been a stylist, standing behind the chair as a makeup artist and a hairstylist. And I actually was an educator in that profession. I worked for a company and I would go to different salons and teach about products. I would teach about haircuts. I would teach about, hair and all these things, makeup. It's just kind of what I did the whole time. And then when I got into the direct selling profession, I was like, oh, this is such a good fit because basically I was teaching and training people, a lot of different things. And that's really, really where leadership became something that I got actually just obsessed with. I wanted to learn from some of the best leaders out there the ones that we say are the best leaders out there. So of course I read the John Maxwell books. I read the Brendan Burchard books. I listened to Tony Robbins and all the other gurus that are out there that speak on leadership. And they have great information. While much of that information, I felt like maybe was a little bit redundant, different in its delivery, of course, from person to person, and some really great ideas coming from people that really spend their lives in leading other people and in personal development. Great information. But for me, alongside of all of this kind of secular training, right, was me growing in my walk with the Lord. I did some very deep dives into the Bible. I got involved with some really serious Bible studies where I learned how to actually study the Bible. I learned about authors that wrote kind of commentaries about the Bible or about books of the Bible. And it was kind of, they were right alongside each other. So even though I was getting the training from the world, the ones that everybody looks up to as these gurus, reading the popular books, Simon Sinek, all these things, right? At the exact same time, God was doing a tremendous work in me. And he was growing me in my walk in the Lord. My faith was changing. The Bible was opening up in these miraculous ways. And I was able to really kind of connect the dots between the things that people teach in the world, like secular kind of training in leadership. And I was able to look at the Bible and see the contrast. Like, okay, the world is teaching this. This is what the Bible says. And this is why the Bible says it. And I started to notice this gap. This gap. And the more that I dove in, the gap became this giant chasm. And I began to realize that so much, if not almost all, of the leadership training that I was receiving and that I was seeking out was just in stark contrast to really being an actual biblical leader. And we look around, I think I've said this before, but leadership is the most written about topic for authors. Like there's more books on leadership than any other subject in the world. And all you have to do is just look up leadership books. You will have so many to choose from. And not to say that they're all, I'm sure they're very good books out there. You know me, I'm a bookworm. I read as many books as I possibly can. And I'm usually reading multiple ones at the same time. So I'm not saying that there's no value in them, but I will tell you that for me, what I have learned in my journey is that the main component for true leadership is missing in the vast majority of the leadership trainings that I have been a part of, that I've read, and that I've attended. And the thing that is missing is the biblical principles. And so at this point of recording this podcast, it was probably about 7 years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I remember I was sitting at the desk in the office of the house that we lived in at the time. So it must have been 7 because I wasn't in this house 7 years ago. And I got this kind of like biblical download, if you will. I had this whole idea for this workshop, this retreat, this 3-day thing. And it was all on leadership. I started writing like the itinerary and the whole, exactly what was going to happen at this event. So I wrote this whole thing out and I was like, okay, this seems really cool, but like, what am I supposed to do with this? At the time, I was knee deep in network marketing, only doing that. I wasn't recording a podcast. I hadn't written any books. That was my sole focus. So I'm like, here's this like biblical leadership event. What am I supposed to do with this? So I didn't do anything with it. I had the notes on it and everything, but I didn't do anything with it. But I think that God was trying to plant a seed in my heart for something that was to come. So I sat on it for a number of years. Then I wrote the 2 books. And at the beginning of 2019, I knew that I was actually going to begin and I was going to write the book Radiant Leadership. I knew that it was going to be called Radiant Leadership. I knew that it was going to be a book based on the biblical principles of leadership, the things that the Lord had taught me over the years. And of course, so much more. He taught me over the years, teaching me right now currently. And so when I wrote the other 2 books, it came extraordinarily easy for me. I wrote the first book in 12 days. And then like a month and a half later, I wrote the second book and it took me 3 weeks. So I was like my flow, what I'm used to with the other 2 books was being able to write, and it came up very quickly, very easily. Well, I began and I wrote about the first chapter of Radiant Leadership, and then it was like it stopped. It was like somebody turned off the faucet for me. And so I realized, okay, maybe the timing isn't exactly right, so I'm just going to put it on a shelf. But I knew that in 2019, I was going to write the Radiant Leadership book. This is the year. Well, if you've followed along to any of the things that I shared with you, later on in the year, God gave me this thing. I knew he was doing something in me. I didn't know what it was, but it felt big and scary. And that was really the beginnings of the birthing of what Girl Power Alliance is today. Well, in the beginning days of Girl Power Alliance, as I'm trying with all of my heart to take all of this vision that God gave me, which is really big, way bigger even than anything that we have rolled out in Girl Power Alliance so far. I say so far. He gave me this big vision. So I'm trying to lay it out like, what, Lord, do you want to be included now in the launch of Girl Power Alliance? How can I do this, do it effectively, do it successfully, have it have the most impact, and keep the main thing, which is you, God. How do I do it? Well, I realized that Radiant Leadership um, was going to be a part of Girl Power Alliance somehow. So I really began praying about it, and God started to kind of give me the outline, if you will, for the whole program. Now, let me give you a little bit of context. In all of my years in the direct selling profession, I have run accountability groups. I have done leadership trainings over and over and over. And I like to tell people this because I think it's an important thing for people to know about me. Malcolm Gladwell, he's an author, a very, very well-known, multiple best-selling author for a number of books. I think it's Outliers. He talks about the 10,000 hour rule. And he says that when you have achieved 10,000 hours of practical application in any field, then you have achieved mastery. Like you have mastered it, 10,000 hours. Well, being that I knew that, I decided I was going to okay, here I'm attempting to write this biblical book on leadership. Who am I to write this book? And so the Lord reminded me of the Malcolm Gladwell rule, and I started to kind of go in and think about all of the things over my career up to this point or that point that I had done that was specifically in the realm of leadership, whether it was me teaching and training it, me attending a leadership training, or being a part of something that had to do with growing my own leadership. And I had definitely reached and even exceeded that 10,000 hour mark. So that gave me personally a little boost in confidence going, okay, so according to Malcolm Gladwell, I'm a master in this skill of leadership and teaching leadership. So that gave me a little boost. I was like, okay, God, thank you for that. And in these accountability groups that I've run over the years, I've done multiple, me and Bobby together. We generally speaking did 3 accountability groups a year for years and years. And they're pretty detailed, these accountability groups. And they were all really to help drive leadership in our business, to teach people how to lead and, hold them accountable and stretch them, right? Well, in all of the groups that I've ever done, I never had 100% attendance from the beginning to the end. Meaning, if I started with 10 people, then at the end, it would end with 4. Generally speaking, it was always about 60% of the people would never make it through the full 90 days. We had a group once that started with 120 people and it ended with 50. And so that's a high attrition rate. I don't take that as a failure or anything. Really growing and staying accountable is something that's difficult for a lot of people. So that just was the numbers. Well, when God was giving me the download for Radiant Leadership, it was a 16-week thing. And I'm like, Lord, I couldn't even get people to stick the whole time for 90 days. And you're telling me that this needs to be 4 weeks longer than that. And, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to write it all out. I'm going to go through this whole thing and then we'll see what I think at the end. Well, long story short, without me going chapter by chapter and pillar by pillar, it's a 16-week, the Radiant Leadership Academy is a 16-week biblical leadership program. It was designed by a woman, for women. If I were to ask you, my listener, if I were to ask you who is the top leadership guru in the world, 9.9% times out of 10, the answer is John Maxwell. And then if I take it a step further and ask them for their number 2 and their number 3, come up with kind of all the usual suspects. And then if I ask somebody the question, or if I were to ask you the question, who's the top biblical leadership guru in the world? You're hard pressed to come up with names, but there are some names that come up. But here's the kicker. If I were to ask you who's the top leadership expert in the world, that's a woman. Nobody has any names. And this is kind of part of my heart for this program, this Radiant Leadership Academy, the book Radiant Leadership, and what we're doing here when it comes to teaching and training and equipping new emerging leaders for the kingdom. I realize that as women, we have willingly We have willingly submitted to the fact that we as women are not to lead, especially in the biblical sense. There are still churches today that do not have a woman on their pastoral staff, and they will not allow women to teach a message. Now, that is changing. We're watching it change, but it still exists. Even today, that exists. And when it comes to being somebody that is always looking to learn and grow, I want to learn and grow leadership. I don't have a lot of women that have directly said, here is your biblical leadership training guideline that I can go to. And so instead of kind of whining and crying about it, I think God wanted me to just to do it. So this is by women for women, and it is a whole different approach to leadership than what the world is teaching. I call it inside out leadership, and it literally is supernatural, spirit-led strategies for you to be the leader that you were born to be as a woman. And in the 16 weeks, we do a deep dive into the Bible. There's accountability, there's challenges every week, and we really study the Word of God. And I like to say that the entire program, the 16-week academy, is really taking natural laws and spiritual laws and talking about them and combining them and learning the power of knowing what they both are and utilizing them together. And I will tell you that when I wrote the program, God changed me. For sure. I was like, oh God, that's so good. Yes, these truths are so good. I'm just digging into the Word, and He's just revealing these things to me like the Bible was new, like I'd never read it. And we went through our very first, it was our beta class in January. And I think we had 10 or 11 women in there. And He changed me again. He changed me again through leading the program the first time. And I was like, man, God, you are so good. And just a little side note, nobody ever learns more than the trainer. That's the truth. So if you're sitting on the sidelines, always learning, never stepping up to actually like take the initiative to lead something or teach or train something, you will never, ever learn as much as you will when you step into that place, which is a lot to do with, your doubt in your ability or your place as a woman to lead, which is something that we work really hard in combating and overcoming and showing you biblically why those things are not true. And so after the first round, it was amazing. I was blown away by the growth that these women had and how God shifted and changed their lives just in this 16-week period of time. And I will tell you, when we were getting closer to the, week 13, 14, 15, I was feeling like we were just getting started. So here I was thinking that 16 weeks was going to be way too long. I wasn't confident that anybody would even stay that long, that they would stay committed. Not only did they all stay committed, number one, but number two, it just felt like we were getting started. It was like really sad when it ended. And as of this recording right now, we are in the second week of our second class of Radiant Leadership. And as I was preparing again for this next class, God changed me again. And here's something that I want to speak to you. When you are intentional about your growth in your walk with the Lord, when you desire Him to that degree, like I want to know God so bad, I want to hear from Him so desperately that I am looking for Him. I am looking at the words in the Bible, and I am like thinking about them. I'm researching them. I'm digging in deep. When that is something that takes hold in your life, everything changes. And if you're listening to this and you have felt called into leadership in any way, shape, or form, whether that is in your home as a parent or in your job, because there is just a vacuum of no leadership in your job, whether that is in your community or your church, or whether that is in business. If you have felt at all any call to step up and step into leadership, I really want to impress on your heart that the Radiant Leadership Academy is for you. God's word does not go void, and your investment into your growth will come back to you tenfold. I guarantee it. So I wanted to talk about it because it's been such it's such a big part of who I am as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as a leader. This component of training up and equipping new leaders for the kingdom right now. It feels, first of all, very weighty, number one, but I feel this sense of urgency. Like the world needs you, whoever that is listening to this, the world needs you right now as a leader more than it ever needed in any other time in history. Like it's exactly like the book of Esther, for such a time as this. Everything has come together in the perfect storm, and now the world needs you to step into this place as a biblical leader, like desperately. We are all feeling the impact of the last 18 months of just warfare, spiritual warfare on a level that I don't know that any of us have ever experienced. It's literally been biblical. And just in the last 6 weeks, Bobby and I have 2 friends who've lost their husbands. Both of them are 49 years old, both of them to sudden heart attacks. These were not people that you would say, oh, well, I mean, look at them. They were super overweight. They were super unhealthy. And as a matter of fact, I just heard today of a family member who's in their, probably very late 20s, who went to the hospital thinking that he was having a heart attack, and they determined that it was palpitations because of stress. The world is stressed. We're feeling it. We're feeling it in our bodies physically. We feel it in our spirit. It is having an impact on the workforce, the family, relationships, finances, everything. There has never been a more important time for you, my friend, to rise up and become the kingdom-driven leader that God created you to be. And why do you need radiant leadership to do that? You don't totally, but because of, and this is my opinion, because of the lack of biblical leaders that we have out there to model, to learn from, to dig in and grow with, that is why I created the Radiant Leadership Academy. That is why you need the Radiant Leadership Academy. So I want to invite you to join us for our next round. It'll be sometime at the end of the summer. This is the only year that we're going to do 3 rounds. Moving forward after 2021, there will only be 2 rounds every year, 2 classes, a class at the beginning of the year and a class at the end of the summer. But this year, because it was just kicking off, that I felt it was important to have 3 separate classes this year, so that we could, like I said, it's just that sense of urgency. I wanted God to get in there and develop and encourage and empower some of these new biblical leaders, maybe you're one of them, to rise up because the world needs you so desperately. So all you have to do is go to girlpoweralliance.com. Up at the top, it says Radiant Leadership. You can get on the wait list. If you are a member of the Radiant Leadership Academy, if you're part of our membership, there is a significant discount on the tuition for members. I will say that. One of the things in my vision for GPA is that anything that we do, whether it's a live event or products or anything, that the people that are our loyal members, they will always have a discount for being a member. It definitely will pay. There are definite benefits to be a member. So you could jump in right now, become a member of Girl Power Alliance, begin your growth journey, because we have so many amazing resources for you in our archive to just grow and learn, and then get registered for the next class when we open up registration at the end of the summer, and just be well on your way to standing in the authority that you were created to have on this planet Earth at this particular time right now. Well, I appreciate you listening to me just ramble on and on about leadership. I want to tell you that, if you have that little nudge in your heart, don't ignore it. The Lord is speaking to you. He's calling to you. He's calling to you, and He wants more for you. and your obedience, your response of obedience to him in this way and your investment into your growth, he will honor you and it will come back to you tenfold. I believe that with all of my heart. So thank you again for hanging with me here for almost a half an hour. And make sure that if you are not already following us or you're involved with us on our private Facebook group, it's called GPA, the Ambitious Christian Women. That is our special little private page on Facebook. And we don't have any rules like some of the other groups on Facebook. They have all these rules like you can post on this day and you can do this. We don't have any of those in that page. We just want to connect with you and make sure that we are creating a community where it is collaboration, not competition, where we are edifying and encouraging each other. We do a live prayer call every Monday on that page. Everybody is welcome. And you are welcome. You are welcome, wanted. You're being prayed for. And we just thank you for being a loyal listener and follower. And I pray that you have an absolutely amazing weekend. And I hope to see you in the next round of Radiant Leadership. Don't forget that Girl Power Alliance is where women grow.